Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this Mott MacDonald LinkedIn event where we're hoping to showcase some of the amazing careers we have in our business. And in this instance, part of a series where we're specifically looking today at transport planning and transport modelling careers. Really great that so many of you have given up the time to attend, and hopefully there's the opportunity for some question and answers towards the end of the session. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Mott MacDonald. I'm a business development manager in our transport planning and transport modelling team. I'm based in Manchester. I'm in fact the office director for Manchester, but the opportunities we have today are sprinkled right across the United Kingdom. So I wouldn't see location in terms of any applications as a barrier. Mott MacDonald has offices in most of the principal cities of the United Kingdom, and the transport planning business that I'm part of is represented in almost all of those: Scotland, Wales, England, etc. I'm going to be joined today with some useful insights I hope will give you the opportunity to imagine yourself working for Mott MacDonald. So the insights will come from a relatively new joiner in my colleague John Roberts. He's got a little bit to say. And some more experienced colleagues who would represent some of our hiring manager community in Sarah Cherry and Katie Chesworth. And a colleague from HR, Rachel Adams, I believe, is going to be the person who will give you some of the details, maybe in terms of exploring an application for some of our opportunities.
Why are we here?
What inspires and motivates us in what we do every day?
We've always been driven by a passion to make people's lives better. Right back to our founders 120 years ago, who pioneered access to clean, plentiful water supplies and developed public transport, making it easier for people to live and work in cities. That spirit lives on in our purpose today.
To improve society by considering social outcomes in everything we do, relentlessly focusing on excellence and digital innovation, transforming our clients' businesses, our communities, and employee opportunities.
As a matter of principle, we believe nobody should be disadvantaged, and we know from experience that inclusive projects deliver the best results for everyone, our clients too.
That's why social outcomes, accessibility, inclusion, empowerment, resilience, and well-being are at the heart of our purpose.
At Mott MacDonald, we use the breadth of our expertise to see the connections between the projects we're helping to deliver and the world around them. How the infrastructure, services, the natural environment, businesses and people work together to maximize the benefit for all.
This is where digital innovation comes to the fore. Combined with deep subject knowledge, our digital skill set helps us, our clients, and partners to address old challenges better and solve new ones. To see problems and possibilities more clearly, to be more agile, efficient, and effective.
It's all powered by relentless focus on excellence. Excellent people, systems and technology all supporting innovation and creative solutions. All centered on improving society.
That's why we're here.
So our company purpose is really central to everything that we do. What does that actually mean on a day-to-day basis in our business? Well, I can reliably inform you that the transformation in our purpose over the last 2 to 3 years has been amazing. And we are really, really committed to delivering better outcomes for people, for the environment, and for businesses. We badge that under social outcomes. Everything we do should be adding value to those organizations and to those stakeholders. That's really important in our value proposition as an employee-owned business, and we'll possibly come on to how being employee-owned really makes our culture quite different. In terms of transport planning and transport modelling, what that actually means is that we're trying to be delivering sustainable transport in everything we do. Economic, social, and environmental well-being is at the heart of all our projects. We do that through that focus on social outcomes, people in place. We do it because we were using the latest digital tools to deliver, and we want to do more innovation. And we have a huge digital platform called Moata that I would encourage you to look at on our website. And really, really importantly, we try to be excellent in everything we do. So people like me with more experience, I'm learning all the time from people like John Roberts, a recent joiner, in terms of how he sees the world. Hopefully he's learning from colleagues like me in terms of how to do things technically and commercially in the new world of sustainable transport. I think by considering a career with Mott MacDonald, you're considering making those big differences. You're considering working in transport across all modes, older, newer, the opportunity to work in active travel, on heavy rail, on all kinds of new opportunities, including walking that reduce carbon footprints in all our transport investments, and importantly, to work on a variety of projects internationally, nationally, regionally, and locally that make a difference to people's lives. I believe John is now going to give us a bit of flavour of his more recent experience of working on some of those projects. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Paul. Okay, so I'm John Roberts, and I've been working at the company for only 4 months in the graduate transport modeller position. So I'm just going to give you, in the next 5 minutes or so, just a sort of background about myself, the reasons why I wanted to join the company, and then the benefits that I've noticed since I started in June. So as I just said, I recently joined the company in June 2021, obviously. My background is a geography graduate. I then went on to do a transport planning master's at the Institute of Transport Studies here in the UK. Following that, I then picked up a position in local authority at Surrey County Council, working as part of their transport policy team. And I spent about 9 months there before joining Mott MacDonald in the transport modelling team here in Croydon. So one of the attractions of joining the company principally was the values, as Paul's alluded to already. There's several projects that have great social and environmental outcomes, and these really, really align to my personal values, and especially around sustainability in transport. Like, I'm a big advocate for sort of active travel solutions and public transport, and that's something that really resonated with me. And then moving on to that, it's the availability of projects, which I think was one of the big attracting forces for me. Whilst I was in local authority, it was mainly based just in one location, the projects I was involved in. And also there was a sort of, possibly due to the pandemic, a little bit of communication issues. And here at McDonald's, what makes the work really interesting is it's such a variety of stuff going on. You can assist in projects that will deliver social outcomes to people across the country. There's so many options, and it's like, for example, I'm working on projects in HS2 in rail, but then also some road projects that are really sort of helping to improve outcomes in that sense as well. And then also, one of the big attractions for me was the flexibility. I live between the Central London office and the Croydon office, and I was in London yesterday. I've been in Croydon last week. There's the flexibility to work in the offices that you want, and that's something that's really encouraged at the company, to sort of try and engage with other team members, people you're working with. So yeah, that's principally, those are the main reasons that I wanted to join. Okay, and on to the next slide. The benefits for me, I've worked with colleagues across the UK in different offices, whether that's Manchester, Birmingham, Newcastle, Sheffield. I've only been here 4 months, and I've worked with people from multiple offices in the UK. But it's not just here, it's also across Europe as well. I've worked with a few colleagues in the Prague office. It's really good as a graduate in the sense that you can work and collaborate with people from different backgrounds and disciplines as well. So I've worked with planners, lots of engineers who have different backgrounds, obviously the sort of numerical side, but then there's also the sort of geographical side as well. There's a real sort of mix of people. And I think that's really good in the sense that you get immediate exposure to people with certain ideas and ways of working. I think that ensures that your own skill set can develop quite fast as well. And also the fact that it's an employee-owned business um, sort of facilitates a community feel. Everyone has a shared vision, is sort of working towards the same goals, as Paul has mentioned quite a few times previously. That yeah. Um, as I've already said multiple times, I've only been here for a few months, but I've already been involved in such a variety of different projects in different sectors of transport. This has allowed me to sort of go outside of my comfort zone and gain exposure to different softwares, different projects, which are at different positions in their timeline. So I've joined some projects which have gone all the way through, but also joined some where they've been right in the middle of it. So you get exposure to sort of different processes and different steps that you have in a project. And this is a really useful learning task, and something I've really valued since I've started. Um, and then the final point that I've got surrounds one more benefit of working here is the flexibility that we've got. As I've said, I've worked both at home where I am today, but also in the two offices, the London and Croydon offices. I was in London yesterday, I'm home today, and I'll be going into Croydon next week. Something I've really appreciated is the face-to-face contact and starting to develop relationships with your colleagues, which I think is invaluable, especially as a graduate with limited experience. But having said that, there is the flexibility, of course. You're not tied to specific days to go into the office. You can go in on a Monday, you can go in on a Thursday, Friday, whatever suits you best. And that also fits around your sort of social life as well, which I think is incredibly valuable, especially sort of with the work-life balance, which I think has been really good for me so far. And yeah, thanks for that. Any questions at the end would be gladly appreciated. And I'm going to pass on to Katie now.
Thanks for that, John. Before we get to Katie, just to emphasise our focus on well-being during the pandemic and the agility of home and office working, and we are really encouraging people to come back into our offices now, retaining that flexibility, obviously, but important, particularly for young people like John, to be face-to-face with more experienced colleagues and indeed enjoy that social benefit of being in the office as well, John. Before we get on to Katie, what I should have said in my introduction for guests on the call is that if you do have any questions, please put them in the chat function now. We'll have the opportunity to consider them and to ask the questions on your behalf as we go through to the Q&A towards the end. So chat function's available and open to take questions now. Over to you, Katie.
Thank you, Paul. So my name is Katie Chesworth. I'm a Principal Transport Planner in our Manchester office. I'm also the lead for sustainability across our UK and Europe transportation unit. So that covers all the work we do across the different modes of transport. I would describe my career as a bit wonky, and that's actually a good example of how at Mott MacDonald we do try and be a bit creative in terms of the types of people that we employ and the spark we see in them as the opportunity for them to develop their careers. The first 5 years of my career, after graduating also from geography, so geographers around and transport planning, was mainly in local and regional authorities down in London. So I worked on behaviour change, travel planning, street scene, master planning type projects, a little bit of project management as well. And then had quite a long career break of 7 years to have my second and third children. And after that, really didn't think that anyone would employ me again. Sort of felt that I was probably been out the industry for too long and I wouldn't be employable. So I considered coming back, but I definitely had a sort of a confidence lacking. I applied to Mott MacDonald and was rather shocked to be offered an interview and even more shocked to be offered a job as a transport planner in Manchester. And since then, I've been with Mott MacDonald now for 5-6 years. I've been a transport planner, moved up to senior transport planner. Now I'm principal, as I said. I'm the lead for sustainability and transportation. I used to be the lead in our division for transport planners. And I've also recently, through the support I've had from Mott MacDonald, become a qualified transport planning professional, so chartered now. What I do now, again, that's also changed a bit. So my career has changed and flourished and aligned with what I like and what I'm learning and the experience I'm gaining with what MacDonald needs as a business and what my clients need and the types of projects we work on. and often what the type of work we do at Mott MacDonald, it's very varied, but we tend to have a bit more public sector than private sector work within our transport planning teams in the UK. So I do business cases, strategies and plans, stakeholder engagement as well. I also do project management. I line manage 4 people and am involved in business and team management in the Manchester office. And that's a good example as well of how opportunities come to you if you're interested. So if you want to get involved in things slightly extracurricular around your day job, that's very welcome. And we look for people who can help develop our business, and also the people that are within it, including junior team members like John, who you just heard from. So that comment on the right of that slide there just accentuates the fact that yes, you will have your own opportunities, career development goals and so on, and we will have what we need as a business. And what we do as much as possible is try and align those. There's different routes up. You don't have to be a project manager or a technical expert, for example, to keep progressing up through the business. On the next slide, I've got some examples of some of the projects I've been working on recently since starting. So bit of a variety there. Top left, bottom right, you can see some stations that I've been working on, particularly on the bottom right. Very proud to have got 24 million for Carlisle Station through one of the business cases that I've been doing to develop that, make it future proofed and a bit more sustainable, and encourage more people to use rail rather than driving around. Top right, you can see some work I did on school travel plans, which I really enjoyed. That sort of touches back to the earlier part of my career, which was more focused on behaviour change. You can also see some examples of some of the connectivity, master planning, transport planning strategy type work I was doing. And in the middle at the bottom there, those are my colleagues who I work on across the business in the UK on sustainability. So that's where people who are interested and involved in that kind of work from a project perspective, but also perhaps in their personal life and in their offices, work together to make sure that we align with the net zero goals and the decarbonisation goals of the UK, but beyond that as well. I have one more slide to present to you, which is just to talk to you a little bit about why I work at Mott MacDonald. I think the colleague owned thing really matters. Every time that I interview somebody for a role, they mention it too. And John mentioned it as well. It's important. It changes how we function as a business. It makes us a little bit less cutthroat, a bit more about caring about and supporting each other's, and ensuring that we develop those to all ranges of the different parts of the business. So those that are very junior or new to the business through to those who've been here for a long time. That's good for us. It's good for us as a company. It's good for the communities we work for, the clients we work for, the projects too. We combine our need as a business with yours, which is what I was saying earlier. No one route up through the company. So if you have something you think would be useful to us, whether or not you're a project manager, a digital specialist, perhaps you're interested in sustainability like I am, we might be interested in you. So don't rule yourself out. Come to us and we'll see what we can do if you're what we're looking for. And we have trust and respect and interest, commitment and support across both directions. So we expect that from you if you come to join us and work with us, and we give it back. And that's really important. That's about our ethos and us as a community. What we're looking for, we have a lot of transport work at the moment, so we're looking for people across the spectrum. But as examples, I'm particularly looking for at the moment the people like transport planners, transport economists and modelers, people who are specialists in business cases and strategies like I am, designers as well, development planners, and also more generalists, particularly at the junior levels. If that could be you or someone you know, we'd be happy to speak to you. That's a whistle-stop tour of my career. I hope that was useful and interesting. I'm also here on the Q&A later if you've got questions, but I'm going to hand over to my colleague Sarah Cherry now, who's going to present a bit about her career, which has come up from a slightly different route to mine.
Hello everybody, I'm Sarah Cherry. I'm a project principal. I'm based at Fleet Place in central London in the UK here. And my particular area of expertise is travel demand management, travel behaviour change, stakeholder engagement, qualitative research, all of those sorts of areas. So I've been with Mott MacDonald for just over 4 years, but my career started out in the private sector. So I'm also a geography graduate. There are people here working at Mott MacDonald that aren't geography graduates. We just happen to have 3 of us on the webinar today. So my first 2 jobs, I was working at the Boots company and then also at Stockley Park, which is a business park near to Heathrow. In both cases, I was invited to develop and support and manage travel plans initially for the company of Boots, and then also working directly for the property developer at Stockley Park. So these were sort of some of the first travel plans in the UK. So I had some good sort of travel plan expertise then to take to the world of consultancy. And whilst I was at Stockley Park, we employed consultants to do work for us, and I quite liked the idea of moving into consultancy. So I spent 14 years working for various different smaller consultancies, but most recently for TRL, or Transport Research Laboratory, who are based in Berkshire, but I was actually based in the London office. So during this time, I was able to broaden out my experience. I was able to gain new skills, work for a variety of different clients. So I was able to do more sort of qualitative research, stakeholder engagement, project management, line management, and setting up and developing teams as well. So I then moved to Mott's 4 years ago. I joined as a project principal, and one of the first things that I did was to get involved with the Heathrow colleague travel strategy, which was a really big and exciting project for me. Having gone from a smaller consultant to a larger one, I really appreciated that opportunity to get involved in a much larger scale and longer term project. I very soon was leading bids, and I also became line manager quite soon after I joined Mott MacDonald as well. And I'm a member of the Transport Planning Society, which is something that Mott supports for staff. So professional membership is something that is supported for staff. So on to the next slide, where I'm going to just talk a little bit about some of the projects that I'm working on or have worked on, just to give a flavour for the sort of thing that you might end up doing if you did join the company. So the first project is in the top left there. That's actually a picture of one of the busy shopping streets in the North Lanes area of Brighton. We were commissioned by Brighton Council to carry out stakeholder engagement with a number of representative groups in the local area. Two of the streets in the North Lanes were closed to vehicle traffic during certain hours as an experimental traffic order. That period is coming to an end, and they wanted us to go and speak to people to find out what they thought about the schemes, whether there were any particular issues or suggestions as to how they could be improved or changed. So for that project, I was the project manager, or I am the project manager. I'm also leading on the stakeholder engagement, and we're now at the stage of actually writing the final report. So that's quite a nice project because it's fairly short. So it was a couple of months time, and it'll be nice to see sort of where it ends. The report that we submit will go to committee, and then a decision will be made as to what happens next. So it's quite nice to be able to see it from start to finish there. The second project is bottom left. This is a picture of the Cheshire Oaks designer outlet up in Cheshire. We were taken on by the council to work with the shopping centre management company to develop a travel demand strategy for the centre. So to help to come up with a proactive plan as to how to better manage the volumes of traffic coming in from the local motorway and the local motorway junction, which was under a lot of pressure. So that was another interesting project. I was project manager for that as well, and leading on the technical work as well. And yeah, just a nice and interesting and varied project. And it was good to actually to be able to work on that virtually. So at no time did I have to go and visit. Everything was done over Teams. All of the meetings were carried out virtually. The third project that I wanted to talk about is on a much larger scale. On the right-hand side there, we were commissioned by the Department for Transport during 2020 to provide support to all of the English local transport authorities. So I think that was 79 in total, to help them to prepare for the return to school after lockdown restrictions had been lifted. So that was in September 2020 initially. The work was then extended to also help with the return to work and retail and the return of visitors as well. So this was on a very large scale compared to the other two projects. which is typical of the variety of projects that I've worked on since joining MOTS, and other people too. Really interesting piece of work. It involved carrying out workshops to provide advice to local authorities, one-to-one support sessions as well over the phone, and then also we developed 2 toolkits which are now available on the DFT website for local authorities to use to help them going forward. So I'm just going to finish off with some of my impressions of working here at Mott MacDonald. Having gone from smaller consultancies to a larger consultancy, Mott MacDonald, I think my initial impression was just the fact that early career professionals, so people that are in the first 10 years of their career, are particularly well supported, I would say. So there's lots of opportunities to take on additional responsibilities, even for people that have just joined as a graduate, for example. There's also a network for ECPs to network with each other and with more senior members of staff as well. So yeah, so that's probably the first impression that I got. Also, just more generally, not just for people in the first 10 years of their career, but generally there seem to be loads of opportunities to take on more responsibility. For example, in my first year, there were lots of emails coming out sort of saying, well, we're needing a line manager for this team. Is anyone interested? Put your name forward if you are. There are opportunities to take on sort of technical lead roles as well. And one of the things that I put myself forward for in my first year or so was to be the resource manager for the transport planning in the south. So that involved just making sure people had the right level of work to do, and that it was spread well around the team. So that was a good opportunity as well. So yeah, so it is a global company, but the teams in the offices are small and friendly. I mean, one of the things that I was a little bit nervous about moving from a smaller company to such a large company was that it would just feel really, really large. But actually, that's not the case at all. Within a few weeks, I soon realised that it actually felt sort of very small and friendly in the team I was working in. Being such a large company does bring lots of benefits. Such a wide range of technical areas are covered. So it's possible to get involved in other disciplines as well, whether to just increase skills or maybe even to transfer, and that applies as well to the wide geographical areas covered too. Culture and values is really important as well. One of the first training courses I had to do when I first joined was about working in an ethical manner, which is really important, and that suits me well. Mott MacDonald is one of the first companies to be carbon neutral as well, which I think is really good. Funding is available for training, but also for innovation. So if a group of staff have an idea of something that they would like to explore further and develop further related to the work that they're doing, it's possible to put in an application for funding for staff time to actually develop that idea, which I think is a really good thing as well. And then finally, there is a flexible working policy, so it works well for people that have families. That works well for me. So I'm going to just hand back to Katie now, who's just going to run through a recap of the sorts of skills that we're looking for.
I am, thank you. Really interesting to hear about your career, Sarah, and Jack's as well. I think the other thing to add here is that it's not, we're not representative of all the people at Mott MacDonald who are transport planners and transport modelers. There's a wide range of them with lots of different skill sets, and many of them with many skill sets. So you can see on this slide here a range of roles of technical disciplines. So for example, you might be a modeler, someone who works on transport economics and appraisal. You might be someone who's a public transport specialist who does it in terms of planning or in terms of modelling. Perhaps you work in TDM, travel demand management, or behaviour change. But also we're looking for people with a certain set of skills in terms of your interpersonal skills. So team collaborators, project managers, people developers as well, everyone from the bottom of our sort of range all the way through to the top in terms of the types of people and the level of your career and how that's developed. We The range of skills and needs that we have might differ slightly in different offices, but we're increasingly a UK-wide offer. So it might be that me in Manchester, I might work on a project down in London because they need a skill set like mine. I think one of the benefits of the pandemic in terms of the working impact of it has been us all being able to be a little bit less attached to our local area and a bit more able to work internationally or nationally, but at the same time still having those really good local connections with our clients and projects. We've got digital and data on there as well, and should have put sustainability on, given that's something I cover. So anything that you think that you can bring, accentuate that in your CV, add a covering letter if you can. We're keen to hear from you if you think you might have a skill or a background within what you can see on this page. But if you have something else that you also think might be useful to us, let us know too. I think we're going to swap back to Paul now and also to our HR team to give you a bit more detail on how to apply for roles at McDonald.
Thank you, John, Katie, Sarah. I'm really excited by what I've just seen, because sometimes as a senior manager, one thinks that all the things that have just been described are happening on a day-to-day basis, and our colleagues there have just described a really great organisation. Where do I apply? And that's a great introduction to Rachel, because she's going to give our external colleagues on this call some ideas of the process for an application. Over to you, Rachel.
Hi everyone, I'm Rachel. I'm one of the Senior Talent Acquisition Advisors for McDonald, and part of my remit is looking after the recruitment for our transport planning, our transport modelling, our transport economics teams across the UK. So I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about sort of how to apply on more of a formal basis, but also if you're not necessarily ready to apply on a more formal basis and maybe you'd like to have an initial chat with me first just to find out a little bit about our opportunities, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn as well. So there are both avenues. I'll also try and give you some handy tips which might be useful. So first of all, if you were looking to apply for any of our vacancies, if you just Google Mott McDonald Careers, you will be directed straight to our careers website. You'll be able to search for a relevant role, so transport planner, transport modeller, sort of transport economist, economics consultant, for example. And if you do see any vacancies you would like to apply to, I'm just going to talk you through the application process. So our online application form takes up to 12 minutes. I'll probably say it's more 5, but our website says 12. And our application form is both desktop and mobile friendly. If you would like to apply, if you can attach a copy of your CV and your covering letter. A covering letter is optional, but I would certainly advise, if you have the time to write a covering letter, it's a really good tool to use to basically add as a surplus to your CV application. Once you attach your CV and potentially your covering letter, we do have a number of gateway questions or application form questions around sort of your salary expectations, what your notice period is, what your right to work is. I think it also asks sort of how you heard about the opportunity, and that just gives us an idea of where people are seeing our vacancies. And the following process I am talking about is for what we call our experienced hire vacancies. We do have a different process for our 2022 graduate schemes. So if anyone is looking for more of a graduate opportunity, if you just Google Mott McDonald graduate, it will take you to our graduate scheme application process as opposed to the experienced hire vacancies. So just a few top tips which might be useful to you. When applying for vacancies, if you can tailor your CV to each individual application rather than sort of having a generic catch-all CV. This is because each recruiter who reviews an application will be looking to utilise both the essential and desirable criteria on the candidate specification when reviewing an application. As I said already, covering letters, they are optional, they're not mandatory for us, but they are a great tool to support your application. You can explain in a covering letter sort of where you came across the vacancy. You can add details as to the reasons why you're interested in the opportunity, and you can also add additional information that might be relevant for the role or the company or our business. that might not necessarily be mentioned on your CV. When applying and completing application forms, I would advise to try and put in as much information as possible. The more detail you can provide, the better sort of the recruiter reviewing your application has an idea of sort of what your expectations are and what your availability is. Generally, I'd say if there's ever a free text box option, if you can put in more quantitative and qualitative details rather than yes, no, not applicable, that's really going to help the recruiter in assessing your application in regards to what the vacancy can provide in terms of location, salary, essential and desirable criteria. The last thing I would say is if you do see any vacancies on the Mott MacDonald website and you have any queries about it, on the right hand panel we do list the recruiter contact, so you can try and connect with them on LinkedIn, or alternatively you can sort of drop them an email or email our careerpoint@mottmac.com email address to inquire about the vacancy. So what happens once you do apply? So we do have relevant talent acquisition coordinators who review our applications, and they will update your application accordingly. So just to let you know, we do respond to all applications, and this might be via email or it might be via a telephone call. If it is through email, I would advise to check both your inbox and your junk, just because sometimes it does get redirected. But as I said, if anyone would like to have more of an informal chat with me, feel free to get in contact with me and I'll be happy to have a chat. So I'm now going to pass back over to Paul, and he's going to lead the Q&A. But thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rachel. Again, thank you to all our presenters, and thank you for everyone taking the time to have a look at the possibility of a career with Mott MacDonald. Just to emphasize, we are doing the Q&A through the chat function in Teams. So if you want to put a chat in there, Q&A is now open. Put a question in and we'll try and answer it. I can see that there's one there from Sri. It says, Sri, sustainability environmental engineer working in the Indian subcontinent, 8 years of experience. You'd like to express interests in Mott MacDonald. So I think Rachel's answered that one. Have a look at the careers portal and see if there are any relevant vacancies to you there. Rachel, is there anything you'd like to add to that one?
Yeah. So as I said, if you do find a relevant vacancy you're interested in and you'd like to inquire about it or have any specific queries, you will find the recruiter contact name for you to get in contact with that individual to speak to them directly. And
there's an additional question there from Sri as well in terms of the working status visas, etc. I think is what the question's referring to. We're a global business. We work in a global labour market, and we consider all applications. And again, Rachel will be in a position to give a bit more detail on advice around any visa requirements.
Yep, that's correct. So Mott MacDonald in the UK do have the ability to sponsor visas and sponsor candidates and obtain certificate of sponsorship. So we can sponsor visas and individuals who won't necessarily have right to work in the UK yet.
Thank you, Rachel. So Saeed, on the guest Q&A, says, since there are rapid advancements in self-driving vehicles, how do you think we can tap into the potential and tune our transport systems to be more efficient? Great question, really tuned with my area of the business, Saeed. I am the Business Development Manager for Transport Planning in Europe and the UK. We're also working on this agenda globally. Connected autonomous vehicles are a centerpiece of our future mobility initiative, which has relevance in terms of net zero, electric vehicle charging, alternative modes, behavior change, etc. It's all in the mix of our future mobility offer, and we have a dedicated team working on future mobility. And probably too early for me to say, but from the 1st of January, we're launching some really, really exciting initiatives around the future of transport and further investment in that with a view to delivering economic, social and environmental well-being. Absolutely great stuff. And we worked extensively on the CAV opportunity already. Thank you for that one. Sorry, questions are pouring in now, so I'm trying to keep up with them. Hermione says, I would like to thank the team for this interesting information. I would like to ask if people from all over the world can apply for vacancies around the world. The answer's already been given from Rachel in terms of sponsoring those requiring work visa applications, etc. The current vacancies we're talking about are in the United Kingdom, so hopefully that answers your question. Rachel, one for you, a bit more detail from Salim, international student studying civil engineering in Glasgow, wants to apply for the graduate route, but will require a visa afterwards. What's the process there?
So that's one probably more for our early careers team. However, from what I do know, if you already have a student visa and you want to apply for graduate vacancies, needing a visa after your student visa expires wouldn't be a barrier.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Good answer. Jack also, hello. Thanks for the informative PowerPoint. You're more than welcome, Jack. You mentioned national and international projects. Are there opportunities to travel to these projects, or are most of the projects done online? It's a real mix, Jack, to be honest. We have colleagues delivering transport planning, modelling and transport economics all over the world. For example, we're working extensively in Brisbane on future mobility. We're working extensively in Sydney on the Sydney Metro. Growing activity in Vancouver, where we just won a job on road user charging. Some of our colleagues have the opportunity to visit there. I'm due to be in the Caribbean myself later in the year, looking at some ecosystem services implications and transport economics associated with a new port terminal in one of the islands. So yes, there are opportunities. Most of the work depends is really dependent on what we can get in through the door, but most of it is in the UK. But most of our colleagues have had some opportunity to go abroad, not so much in the last 18 months due to the pandemic, as you might imagine. But again, John has been working online with colleagues in the Prague office, and I've no doubt in the fullness of time, he will get them to meet them in person, either in London or in Prague. Anything else? Is it possible to have a 100% remote work contract? Sravan, I think that is a really good question. Some of us colleagues do have working from home contracts. Our preference in this recruitment drive is to have people who do the agile working, who are in our offices, who are getting to know the business, etc. It's a real challenge for a newcomer to come to the business without being face-to-face in the office with people, learning our systems, learning from more senior and experienced colleagues, as Katie said earlier, learning from colleagues in other disciplines. So it's not impossible to have a remote working contract, but I think certainly in terms of this particular recruitment drive, we're looking for people to be office-based and to do some agile working for us. Thanks very much. Joseph as a guest, being a transport planner outside the UK with 5 years plus of experience in UK transport planning. How is the chances of a visa sponsorship? I think we've answered that one, Joseph, unless Rachel wants to say any more.
I can add a bit more. So post-Brexit, the visa scenario did change with UK VI. Prior to Brexit, we used to have what we call Tier 2 general visas, and we would, for transport planning, have to conduct a resident labour market test. That has now been, for lack of a better word, scrapped. So I would say the chances of being able to obtain a visa as long as you fit the criteria of the role would be fairly high. There are a couple of tests that have to be passed, or you have to get a certain amount of points, I should say, to be able to get the visa. But generally, 9 times out of 10, I'd say the visa would be able to come through. So I hope that helps.
Thank you, Rachel. Fascinating question from Zachariah. Hope I've pronounced that properly. Thanks for the presentation. I wanted to ask about any interesting recommended reading about the future state of transport and urban mobility. Zachariah, great question. Sort of answer is, how long have you got? I'm going to ask Katie and Sarah if they want to make any recommendations. But for me, the big piece of reading at the minute is to understand and get your head round the UK government's Department for Transport's Transport Decarbonisation Plan. It's 200 or so pages. It's available on the web. Find it on Department for Transport Decarbonisation Plan. There are huge implications and opportunities for society, for transport as a sector, and for our business, and hopefully for you as a transport planner into the future. Katie, any other probably less direct reading that you would recommend? Sarah, same question.
I think there's always, if you read the Guardian newspaper, other newspapers are available, but there's always lots of interesting things in there around transport. I would also recommend, you won't be surprised to hear me say this, going on the MOPMAC website. So if you look on there, there's a lot of our views and our news, and you can see what our industry specialists think about the future of mobility. In October, there's due to be the launch of our This is the Future campaign with relation to transport. So you'll see that come up. You can read our articles about what we think about the future of sustainable transport. And yes, the transport decarbonisation plan is a good one to look at as well. Sarah, I don't know whether you've got any thoughts to add, but Paul, I just also point out there was a question earlier from Harapreeth that was needing an answer, one from Marcos as well. You'd have to scroll a fair way up, sorry, down the list.
Okay.
Just answering the question about where to read. Yes, as you were asking the question, I googled Mott MacDonald future mobility, and there's loads of stuff on the Mott MacDonald website, all about the work that we've been doing, and as Katie said, some thought pieces on there as well. So that would be a really good starting point, I think.
If I could also jump in, if that's okay. It's not just about reading. I'd also really recommend just going on YouTube and like searching for webinars, transport-based webinars. They're a really handy tool just to see what's going on sort of policy-wise, and then also it's a bit more interactive than just reading a screen for a few hours. It's a bit more engaging, so that's also something I'd recommend.
Okay, thanks, John. Final one on this for me. We do sponsor Professor Glenn Lyons as the Mott MacDonald Professor of Future Mobility at the University of West of England. If you go onto LinkedIn and find Glenn Lyons, you will see that he is a constant source of amazing challenges, solutions, issues, etc., around the future of transport planning. So I would recommend simply LinkedIn, Glenn Lyons. There'll be lots of reading material there. Harapreeth, an international graduate who's applied for BIM positions, is it necessary to be fluent in every software that is specified in the description, or can one learn if they are capable enough for the position? I think it's really important that, as we've said in your CV application, covering letter application, etc., that you make the case for your application around particular software where you do have experience, being really truthful in terms of the extent and range of that experience in specific software. And of course, as Sarah's already said, we invest in our people. So it's the opportunity to learn new software because it's evolving all the time, to learn on the job, and also specific external training to invest in our people. So the answer to your question is yes, Harapreeth. What was the other one I missed, Katie?
There is a question around salaries, which was from Marcos, which I think probably is one to send to Rachel.
I can't see
the question was, hello, thank you for a great presentation. Thank you, Marcos. How do salaries within transport planning compare to those within highways?
It's a very good question. On top of my head, I wouldn't be able to make a comparison. The reason being is Mott MacDonald, we don't advertise our salaries for any adverts really, a lot like our competitors. The only thing I can say is that we do internal benchmarking with the rest of the team through an interview process to ensure that if we want to make an offer to an external candidate, we are considering the current team and seeing where that person would fit to ensure we are making a fair offer.
Thank you, Rachel. Hopefully that answers your question, Marcos. Sorry I missed it earlier. Any new ones?
There's a question from Akbar saying, again, thanking us, saying my background is within designing for accessibility within the rail industry. Would that be suitable for a career within transport planning?
Thanks, Akbar. To some extent, depends what you mean by the words accessibility. Obviously, we're talking about transport planning, transport model, and transport economics for this particular set of vacancies. We do have specialist rail colleagues, Interestingly, however, just within the team that I'm responsible for, we do have people who do pedestrian modelling. So if that's what you mean by accessibility, yes, we have a particular tool called STEPS, which models accessibility, particularly around station for all modes, but came out of the rail industry. So really interesting that we are pioneering that particular software. And of course, for us, accessibility, equality, diversity, and inclusion, in whatever definition of accessibility, is really front of mind as we seek to deliver social outcomes and inclusion in all our transport projects. So the answer is yes. Where exactly that fits may be worth a conversation with Rachel if you're interested. I think, according to my colleagues, that's perhaps the end of the questions, unless there's any last ones. Katie, you've been managing me really well. Oh, hello. Amy Siegel. Hi, Amy. Are there many urban planners that work in transport planning? Thank you so much. We have developed an interesting approach, Amy, where we see alongside our colleagues who specialise in the cities and built environment, the value of working together, bringing the accessibility and opportunity, economic and social uplift delivered by good transport solutions, rail, road, tram, cycling and walking, etc. That can really contribute to urban design and placemaking. So the answer to your question is yes. What do you think are the top 3 skills required to achieve mastery as a transport planner? And how do you think is the best way to develop these skills? Another question from Zachariah. I'm going to ask Sarah and Katie to answer that one. Top 3 skills for a good transport planner.
Oh, that's putting us on the spot, isn't it, Sarah? I think they're actually, obviously there are the transport planning skills that you need. I think you need an inquiring mind. You need to be somebody who's thinking about approaching it as a problem that needs a solution. So how do I connect different things together? How do I not just stay within the blinkers of the area that I know? But for example, as Paul was saying, if I'm working on a placemaking or streets scheme, can I also think about the economic benefit? Can I also think about the social outcomes that come for the people that are local to it? Have I done enough stakeholder engagement? So thinking around that and having that mind that's asking those questions. A desire to develop yourself is important as well. And I don't know, that's 2 of mine. So have you got any other thoughts on key things?
Yeah, I would say more of a generic skill to be able to work in a team, whether that be to be part of a team or to lead a team. I think that's a really essential skill. Being a transport planner here at Mott MacDonald, it obviously applies to a lot of other careers as well, but I'd say that's an essential part. And also being able to sort of manage projects, or at least be part of projects that are being managed and sort of understand how that all works, and understand that there's a budget allocated to a project and how to work to that budget and to that timescale. So I think that they're the 2 things I would want to mention.
And I think a lot of what you've both said there in answer to the question really chimes for me in terms of, delivering social outcomes requires that inquiring mindset and willing to be part of a team and to look beyond the immediacy of the transport angle to deliver all the benefits we possibly can. To be technically excellent. So you, Sarah and Katie, you've both mentioned their interest in and support they've had for professional qualifications and chartership. It's really important to have that strong evidence of a professional base and that you've been prepared to invest in that technical expertise. And likewise, I think digital is becoming more and more important as a skill set, being able to adapt to new software, new techniques, data handling, data management and presentation. And commercial, of course, from my perspective, we are employee owned. We like to do great work, but we are a commercial organisation as well. Okay, I think that's the end of the questions, and Teams has helpfully popped up with a note saying there's 5 minutes to go. Unless there's any last comments, questions, remains for me to say thank you to the team for organising this. Thank you to our speakers, John, Rachel, Sarah, Katie, and thank you all for attending. I'm really fascinated to find out, Rachel, the number of applications and inquiries we get from this process. And indeed, any feedback from those on the webinar in terms of this sort of LinkedIn type of conversation. If the feedback's good, we'll probably do more. Maybe there's room for improvement. We'll take that on board, etc. Maybe it doesn't work for you and we need to think about some different ways. So please make positive suggestions. Thanks again to everyone for your attendance. Have a great afternoon and hopefully look forward to seeing your applications. Thanks again. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you.